This is Off Planet Radio.
So we'll call this part 2, and we are talking with Sarah Stanga from the UK, and also on the line on this call is Miranda Kelly, who has sort of graciously hosted this conference call today and kind of put it together. It was our hope originally when you did the Sacramento training session with Duncan that Sarah would have been there and I would have been there, and for very different reasons, neither one of us wound up getting there. So in a sense for me, and I think for all of us, this was kind of a way to get around the fact that we didn't get that face-to-face contact that I think we would have liked to have had. And that kind of goes into the interference level that happens with, I will call it the truth community, the people that are actually doing something and the people that are trying to connect. Yes, I can speak. The journey that you had coming into the United States, Sarah, can maybe just a little bit about that for anybody that hasn't heard the story of how you were messed with.
Okay.
If you don't mind.
No, it's fine. There are various different ways that I was messed with, right from the outset of going to get the coach to the airport. You know, I just happened to bump into a family member who was at the bus station, basically. He just happened to be there. Then even getting, to Birmingham International Airport, there was, there were basically agents there. I got a lot of psychic attack whilst I was there. I managed to get into Germany, and there was just constant. I felt like I was under some constant kind of psychic or energy attack throughout the whole trip, basically. And even taking the plane from Frankfurt over to Charlotte, I got a lot of psychic attack on the plane. There were greys on the plane. I had been forewarned actually by my spirit guides that there would be some alien disturbance whilst I was on the plane. So I'd kind of been sending.
Nobody ever believes those stories. I remember telling Duncan about a trip that I took to Phoenix, and about the fact that when I boarded my flight in Chicago to fly into Phoenix, something walked onto that plane that was really not human. And for some reason, I seemed to be the only person that was aware of this entity, who then was seated 5 aisles back from me and proceeded to spend 3.5 hours scanning me.
Yeah.
That is like one of those details in all of this that the average person just has no framework for.
No, they don't. It was quite scary. It was quite scary. I mean, because I'd been warned in advance, and I'd even been shown pictures by my spirit guides of what some of these agents were going to look like, and they did turn up. They're one of them in particular who I was warned quite a lot about. Turned up on the plane and even sat in the exact seat where they said he was going to be sitting on the plane to Charlotte. And luckily I'd sent protection to myself in advance into the future and around the plane and around myself, as well as also calling in protection whilst I was there. But there were greys there. They were astrally there. They were going round. Anybody who was nodding off and asleep was having something done to them on that plane, and I found that quite horrific. And I'm struggling just to keep my own psychic protection up, and what protection I put up around the plane, let alone doing anything for anybody else, you know, which was a bit distressing for me. And then I got into Charlotte, and from the moment I stepped off the plane in Charlotte, there was just a very, very weird atmosphere. I remember standing in queue to get my passport looked at, to be able to get through border control. I know there was some kind of telepathic contact with an agent there. And I just remember having to ground and shield and just kind of like focus, like, look, just get through this and get on to the next plane, and we're almost home dry. And basically, as I showed my port, it was a case of, you know, madam, we need to inspect your baggage, and we need to ask you some questions about why you're coming here. And I was basically held in Charlotte and pretty much interrogated. They did go all through my luggage, and then they basically interrogated me for roughly about 6 hours. There is some missing time there, because I know that the whole interrogation, including going through my luggage, only took at the most 2.5 hours. But I spent 6 hours in Charlotte. So, you know, before being sent on a plane back to Frankfurt, and I wasn't exactly treated particularly well. They
understatement.
Understatement of the century.
Yeah.
And I was basically made to feel like I was a threat to the American public. It's basically, I mean, I still have my file here. They sent me home with a little file of a statement. There was no witnesses. They didn't record the conversation or anything. It was just between me and this woman.
Well, the Skype's dropping out again. That's it.
No, I won't mention his.
It wouldn't be our typical interview if we didn't have interference.
It would.
You know, they gotta fuck with you once in a while, and I guess this is it. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can feel I'm definitely getting some energy sent to me, and someone's trying to trigger me. So yeah, I'm getting stuff.
I'm trying to shield. I've been trying to just hold a shield the whole time and push back.
Mm. So.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, at Charlotte, the guy that interrogated me was definitely psychic. I knew I was being scanned and remote viewed at the same time as well. They took my photograph, they took all my fingerprints and what have you. They basically held me there for quite a few hours. They claimed that I was potentially a threat to the American public, that there was no proof of the address I was going to, which was rubbish, because they even went through my emails and they even found my blog, because I heard them tittering about it very, very loudly. And they knew that that I had a legitimate reason for traveling to the United States, because I told them about the seminar and who it was being held by and where.
Well, that will certainly earn you brownie points with TSA.
Yeah.
I'm sure that went over smashingly.
One of the things that kind of, on reflection, is quite funny, but at the time wasn't, was that there was a picture of President Obama up on the wall, and I remember having a thought to myself of, bloody Obama. And then just like being given a telepathic contact by this NSA agent who was interrogating me, saying, well, that's not going to get you into the country, is it? So yeah, he basically that happened, and yeah, there's missing time from there. I still haven't recovered all the memories of what happened from Charlotte. I do have some recovered memories in Frankfurt on the way back to the UK, which are pretty horrendous, actually. I know that I was taken away to a room and interrogated in Frankfurt, but I know that they triggered me and did that, and I have no idea whereabouts in the airport they triggered me or how, but I do have memories of being taken into a room and being interrogated in Frankfurt as well, before going back to Birmingham International Airport in the UK. And then Miranda, what were you going to say before the line dropped? You said something.
Oh, right. Oh. Just from my end, I was waiting at the airport to pick Sarah up, and everybody got off the plane, and she didn't, and my stomach just dropped, and I thought, oh, this is not good. So, but at no point did they allow her to contact us, so I just had to kind of go by feel and intuition, and so I kind of tried to remote view her, and I got very strongly that she was in a trance at the moment that I thought, oh, this is really, really bad. Not super surprising, but, you know, we'd really thought she would make it there. So finally, after, it was like 3 o'clock in the morning when I finally was able to contact the airline, who told me that she had been detained at Charlotte and denied entry because she didn't have the proper documentation, which is bollocks, because she had a perfectly brand new British passport, and they told me that they were going to just turn her around and send her back on the return flight early, and no refund. They were very clear about that. No refund on the plane ticket. So at least I knew that she wasn't going to be detained for days and days and days. I just wanted her at that point to be able to get back home and away from this, what must have just been a horrible nightmare, and just know that she was, well, if not safe, then not stuck somewhere. But it was devastating. It was just crushing because, you know, Duncan and I, we walked into the seminar, and there was a group of about 5 or 6 people there, and everybody was smiling and happy, and they looked up and they said, you know, they're looking behind me, like, where's Sarah? Where's Sarah? Everybody was so excited to meet Sarah, and because we had told a few people in secret, and it was just one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, to tell them that she didn't make it, and everybody was horrified, and we didn't know all the details. Finally, Sarah was able to send me an email, and we connected a little bit, but we knew it was bad, and it was just devastating. And then to not have you there, Randy, too, was really, really hard. But it really, the whole atmosphere of the weekend was just so angry and sad to know that after everything that Sarah's already been through, which is heinous, to have her be put through that again, it's so beyond wrong. I don't.
Yeah, the Skype line is really, really bad. Sorry, every once in a while you cut out. There we go again. Okay, we'll recall. I am not shutting the recorder off. The Skype has been tampered with massively, and there are, again, IP packets that are coming across my computer because I have a network monitor on my computer, and I'm being hit with packets right now that are blocking this call. So here we go.
Okay.
I'm doing a running narration. I'm looking at my computer. My firewall is insane. You know,
did you get any of that?
I got some of it. What happened is it just drops, and it's not dropping in the normal way. But here's the thing. Sarah didn't get to go to Sacramento. It's become very clear that it's open season on certain people in terms of them not being able to travel. Well, gosh, what a surprise. After 9/11, when they started to clamp down security here, then after 7/07 in the UK, they clamped down heavily there. You had the Madrid bombings that clamped down Madrid, effectively triangulating Europe. What I think, I'm sitting here thinking, anybody that can hear this interview and listen to this needs to understand that this grid wasn't just put out there to trap MK Ultra victims and people who have been part of ritual abuse. This is a net that's been put out to trap people who are considered to be subversives. And they do it in all kinds of ways. They do it to me all the time. They do it to you guys. They do it to you, Sarah. And this is why pushing these stories out is important. It's almost with me a compulsion. I can't not do this anymore. The more they fuck with us, the more I need to do this. And it's almost now standing on a line, daring them go ahead, because we can't even have phone calls that we're not tampered with.
No.
And airports are a huge one, not just for MK Ultra people. We've discovered that people go to airports and they do a lot of messing with people there as far as making them lose time.
Yes, we saw that even with the Camp Hill meeting and one of our friends who flew in to Camp Hill. Mm-hmm. And, our poor friend shows up and there's a patch of his hair shaved off and he's missing time.
Oh, my God.
And his backpack with his laptop and plane ticket, passport. They really like using airports for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And just messing with people too. They did that with me and my little iPod. I had it on me, and then I was missing just a few minutes of time, and it was gone. And then I got a call or an email a few weeks later saying it had made its way to Albuquerque. I did get it back, but
wow,
just bizarre. Like just kind of showing that they can do it just to do it.
Yeah.
Kind of thumbing their noses at us.
Yeah, I completely agree.
So where I wanted to go in this segment, Sarah and Miranda both, goes, I guess, into, healing, wholeness, trying to reassemble shattered reality from what's really pretty much on a broad scale, pretty broken reality for everybody if they just wake up and realize it. Sarah, you have found some things within Buddhism, and you wrote to me about, and I may not pronounce this right, Kenrazig or Shenrazig. Sarah, are you? This is so bizarre. Hello? Okay, once again.
Hold up. Oh, hello.
Oh, yeah.
There we are.
I just
again.
wonder, why now?
Sarah's turned into an electronic garble. Miranda, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just random.
Can you guys hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
I can hear.
Sarah, can you hear Randy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this is going a completely different route. All of a sudden, it just drops off. Then it rings, and I can't reconnect. There's not even an answer button when you recall. So
That they do that to me a lot too.
okay, that's the first time I've ever experienced this. But like I said, my firewall is flying up like crazy right now. So somebody's lobbing IP packets across this whole conversation, and it may be an attempt of denial of service. So we'll just keep going. What I referenced before we dropped off again, Sarah, was some of the things that you've been studying in relationship to if I can say this, a Kenrezig Buddhism. Boy, somebody...
A particular form of Buddha. And basically the story behind him is that he had so much compassion for humanity that he split into 10 different heads and more than 1,000 different parts. And it just came to me in kind of a flash. I don't know how relevant this may be or not in regards to mind control and the fracturing of the mind into alters. But that to me, I don't know, I just kind of woke up one morning and I just kept getting the word in my head, Chenrezig. Amazing, and I went to him. He had so much compassion for humanity that he basically was fractured into all these different parts, and then basically was rewarded for his compassion on that level. And from that, I just kind of, the first thing that came to my mind was, well, you know, a lot of people in MK Ultra, they say that we chose this life, and I think my spirit guides were trying to give me some kind of emphasis on, you know, this, what you've chosen to do in this life for whatever reason is compassionate, and you've had your mind fractured, you've had it split into these different alters and personalities, and you know, basically I think it was their way of saying, look, you know, no matter how shit your life is, you know, by coming forward, by stepping out, by making connections with other people in the MK Ultra community, you're doing something very positive here. You're giving people the opportunity to listen and to take notice of what's going on, you know, basically. So that's where Chenrezig comes in. And then there's been other areas of communication with my spirit guides to do with this, that brings in various kind of things to do with mind control, even on the holographic principle, which I know can be a bit new agey in places, but it's almost like, you know, we're meant to be a microcosm of the macrocosm as human beings. That's what they say in occult lore, and as a further analogy, it's almost like they build a further microcosm within a microcosm with all these different archetypes and, you know, alters and personalities that they've built that are in certain hierarchical structures that kind of represent another microcosm, basically, you know, although it's controlled, it's contained by programmers and handlers, you know, it's abusive, but basically, essentially, that's what they're doing, and that was the whole kind of thread of thought that kind of came through with my spirit guides, basically, on this particular morning, where, you know, I just kept hearing that word, Chenrezig, and looked it up in my dictionary of Buddhas, and there he was. So that's where that comes in.
It's interesting. I had never encountered that before you sent it to me. The fact that you have this compassionate being that splits into thousands of parts is very much, that's very much a fractal model of what they've been doing.
Yeah, definitely. And that's it. You know, that's exactly what they have done to us. You know, they've fractured our mind. They've split it off into different groups and families, for different programs or different tasks or different groups, and you know, and I didn't know at the time that had been researched and documented by people like Fritz Springmeier, but I know from reading some of his works this year that's well, definite.
What's that name again? Who was writing about that?
Fritz Springmeier.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, and Cisco Wheeler.
Bloodlines of the Illuminati. Yeah,
that one. And that these trinity of goddesses kind of like support each other, kind of have like a main goddess who is the main archetype of whatever goddess they program me to, whether it's a Latvian pagan goddess, a Celtic pagan goddess, an Egyptian pagan goddess. And then there'll be kind of two goddesses based on the same goddess beside her that are to do with almost different emotional attributes to do with her. So, if they need that goddess to be a little bit more fiery and bad-tempered, then, she'll work with one altar. And if they need her to work in another capacity, there'll be another altar of her that'll step forward and work with her, and sometimes all three, depending on what energies they wanted to manifest. One of the other things that I also found is that I have altars that are based on planets. They're based on, and most of the planets are basically named after gods anyway. And one of the other things that I know that they used me for, particularly in ritual, is if there's a particular conjunction of planets that have come up that are affecting a particular area of the earth and various things, one of the things that they would do was they would call me into a ritual. They would bring forth that planet or god, and say, for instance, Neptune is in opposition to Uranus. It would be like a theta, magical battle, and one of us would be Neptune, one of us would be Uranus, and there would be a magical battle that they would use with me in one altar as one planet and the other person in another altar as the other planet, and set into a theta magical battle. So it's just absolutely dawned on me this year in particular, just the absolute depths of how particular they have been based on a person's natal chart, based on a person's genetics, and even to a certain extent, I personally believe potentially past life karmic influences in being able to use all these different influences during dissociation and traumatization and building of these altars, to be able to use them so specifically for whatever program that they want you to work in at that time, and particularly in the ritual magic that I was used in that area of the programs. It's so specific. It's so specific. I personally believe that very, very sincerely, when it comes to mind control, it's literally considered an esoteric art by these people to be able to do what they do based on numerology and chakra energy levels and meridians, and using those as to be able to manipulate certain mind and energy and emotional states when building these altars. In particular, from my own personal memories for black magic, for satanic rituals.
And why do you think it's become now so obvious? I mean, we're into the second decade of the 21st century, and obviously these programs go back a long, long time, thousands, maybe tens of thousands of years, but they seem to have come to height during the period of the Third Reich, and they seem to have migrated out of World War II into Great Britain and the United States, where we're told we won World War II. I'm not convinced we ever won anything other than the fact that the Nazis and their occult sciences found a safe harbor in other lands. And as we enter the 21st century, all these energetics start coming in. I mean, anybody that's not aware now that we are in a state of heightened energetics on the earth grids they're numb, they're dumb, and they are completely clueless. So I'm saying all that to say that it feels like we're at this point of decision on the planet. It feels like each one of us individually and even collectively, as we seem to coalesce into different small groups, have a sense that we're in a great battle, and that the energies are high, and that not necessarily are what we call the cabal, the Illuminati, the elites are winning anymore, that there seems to be a changing of the tide, and that the tide's turning on a very small group of people. Can you kind of maybe speak to that a little bit, Sarah? And you too, Miranda, by the way.
Well, I think the tide is definitely turning. The tide is definitely turning. All I know from, and this is from memories that I have from speaking with my programmers and handlers in the programs, and particularly in relate to the occult training that they put me through. I do remember one of my programmers, and this is in my blog as well actually, turning around to me and basically saying that at roughly about this time there was going to be some kind of 5-year period of a step up and growth and input and energies, which would be a spiritual war. It would be a spiritual battle, and it would be coven against coven, grove against grove, temple against temple, soul group against soul group, and that it was deliberately manufactured and generated, basically. So I do know that is one of the things that's going on. How it will play out and what is anybody's guess. One of the words that I've had rammed into my brain repeatedly over the years, clairaudiently, has been the Ragnarok, again and again and again and again and again. The Ragnarok, the Ragnarok, the Ragnarok. So I think it relates in part to do with that.
Can you explain what that is, Sarah?
Yeah, the Ragnarok is a very big part in Scandinavian pagan law, in particular Odinism.
Okay.
And it's to do with the end of times battle, basically. And basically, as a brief overview of what it is, everybody who's in this battle knows apparently who's going to win, what the end outcome's going to be, but everybody plays their part anyway and fights for whatever side, whatever group that they're meant to be on or be in. They fight it anyway. And that's basically what it is. It's like an end of time spiritual battle that's prophesied Odinist in law. I don't know if Miranda wants to expand any more upon that, if she knows any more than I do. But
I know that Duncan has talked to me about this for as long as I've talked to Duncan, from day one.
I thought that was perfectly said, actually.
And it fits into a lot of different streams of thought, religion, mythology, in terms of the sense of time and the sense of purpose. I mean, from my personal experience, I don't remember a time when I did not feel like I was here for a purpose and that this particular time was important. And again, the call drops out. Okay, are you back in again? Hello.
One thing that I think will make a big mistake on is...
This is like the... sorry, we dropped off again.
That's okay.
It's like somebody's punching my buttons now. It's... Yeah, so what I was saying was that this is all just part of this gestalt that we're going through collectively.
Yeah, and it's not something... I don't know if I cut off before this, but it's not... Like Sarah was saying, it's not avoidable. Some people think that if they do X, Y, and Z, it can change things. But to a certain extent, this has been written in the stars for a very long time, and we just need to be able to go through it and handle it and come out the other side.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I definitely agree with that. You know, and it's going to get heavy, and from what I started, and it's going to continue and get worse. What the end date is, what the actual end date, I don't know. I do know that I do know that there's a specific 5-year period where they're whipping the energy. That's from my memory. I don't know if that's just info that was deliberately given to me or what have you. Or when the actual end date is, I don't know. But it's something that they have definitely been helping to construct within various occult communities and spiritual religious traditions and communities, and it is all to do with the Ragnarok, basically, to do with this end time spiritual battle.
And I guess that goes into...
We've been told...
Go ahead, please.
They're hitting you really hard.
Yeah, they're hitting you in particular really hard. They're trying
going after your electronics.
Oh,
they're trying to hit me at the minute, but I think I'm okay for now.
So where did we leave off?
Well, Sarah was really kind of summarizing this whole end times battle thing, and that it's inevitable, and that nobody really knows the time of it, but that we apparently are real close. So
yeah,
take it from
did
there.
you get the part? Did you hear that Duncan and I got information recently saying that things are going to start getting pretty hairball starting this fall?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
And I got the next March is going to be really, really hairy as well. That's going to be a pretty bad time. There's some pretty hair-raising stuff that's going to go on from March as well from next year. And I also got that this fall was going to be pretty bad, pretty dire. So.
Yeah, this is kind of like the wind-up and the pitch which is an American baseball term, sorry. But my sense is that 2013 is where the real game gets played, or at least begins to play out, and that it's going to run for several years.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And I think that goes into a lot of things that are going on in the backdrop right now, the heightening of energies, I don't know if anybody's aware that on the 4th of July we had a CERN thing that came up. They claim to have run the Hadron Collider and encountered the Boggs-Higgins particle.
Oh, the Higgs boson.
Higgs boson. That's what. I went completely mentally dyslexic on that.
I like Boggs-Higgins actually. I like that better. The Wade Boggs particle.
Well, it's complete bullshit. I mean, that's the God particle. Really, you found God in a collider. Okay.
Yeah.
This is all this is all part of their witchcraft, which is a lot of what science is anymore. The science has dovetailed right over into the witchcraft. And I think, interestingly enough, Sarah, that's what you've really been riffing on with this whole thing. I mean, how much overlap there is between the plans they have using these dark occult signatures and overlaying it with all this weird technology that goes into the ETs and everything else. I mean, it's like the perfect storm. It's like everything is converging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they are so articulate in all of this. They know how the earth energies are moving. They know when they're going to move. There's the energies between the chakras of the earth, the elemental vibrations of the earth and how they're moving, the kundalini channels of the earth and how they're moving, and they completely use this to their advantage. Absolutely. Even down to the wars, and I know I probably am going to get hit for this, but I'm going to say it anyways. One of the things that they did use me in for the programs was there is always a team of occultists behind every wall that are stirring up energies and behind the wall every single time, and those are some of the memories that I have. And again, even the wars that that they're going through, the Afghanistan war, the Kuwait wars, all these different wars that are going on there, they're not just planned in advance on just one level to, when it comes down to how these wars affect society, how they affect the economy, the planets that are going to be going around at the time. The whole thing is completely, absolutely ritualistic on so many different energy levels, even down to the amount of people that they will have in the rituals, and how the rituals are set up and performed. Just everything, absolutely everything. And from my memories, they use ritual magic for everything from the wars to influencing the economy and finance, even behind the music scene. There's just so much of it that's going on out there. Yeah. So much of it that's going on out there. You're not just getting information from your TV and the media. There's these subtle energies, there's occult energies which are everywhere, and they affect us and they influence us. And if they can affect and influence the energy grids and the ley lines and the meridians of the earth, they're affecting you. And they're not just affecting you, they're affecting all the plants, the flora, the fauna, the animals, everything. And, you know, it's having vast knock-on effects. And that's a massive part of what they're doing. It's a huge part from my memories, so, and experience.
I agree. I think that kind of fits in with what we've been talking about, where they're trying to tenderize people with all of that, plus, you know, chemtrails, vaccines, fluoride in the water. We've noticed within the past 2 months a tremendous surge in demonic attacks and influence on people, where people are acting totally out of character. They're harassing and haranguing other people, getting angry, being violent. People are feeling it and they're not quite sure what it is, and we've traced a lot of it back to demonic attacks. And what they've done is they've set up the population so that they're more receptive to this negative energy, where they don't have the DNA sequences, you know, where they're being degraded, they're vulnerable energy fields. They don't have the intuition developed to recognize that it's attack, and they don't have the knowledge to know that it is an outside attack. They think it's their own feelings. And we've gotten scores of emails from people saying, everybody around me is going crazy. And I'm also getting, you know, they're telling us that they're experiencing bouts of extreme rage or extreme depression or suicidal thoughts. And it's so many people are telling us this. And so at the moment, we think that somebody, they're really pushing the past couple months to attack people. They're worried about something that they may see in the near future, but these attacks have ramped up for whatever reason on everybody, just about. And that's another thing that has changed recently, is they seem almost desperate in trying to attack and subdue people.
Well, I'm even looking at this massacre out in Colorado in Aurora, the Batman massacre, and I got to tell you something. I went down that rabbit hole, and I spent 6 hours today crafting an article that took my head into some places that I was bouncing against my own limits, and I stretch pretty far. But I have to say that what they're doing right now on a mass scale is programming, and they're programming multidimensionally now. They're programming on a temporal level. And this is something I wanted to see if you had any insights into as well, Sarah, and that is, you know, temporal programming, timelines, and things like that go into 4D and 5D programming.
One of the things that I've noticed, that I'm not sure how relevant this is, but one of the things that I have noticed with some of my altars is that they are programmed into various chakras, or a sequence of various chakras, including the crown chakras and the earth star chakras. For instance, there was one particular altar that I have that she's only linked to the fourth crown star and the fourth earth star. And she only works, I think, with the solar plexus and the heart chakra and the third eye from my physical body. How they've done this, I have absolutely no idea. I do have memories of being traumatized and given some form of electroshock therapy that looked like acupuncture needles, so I know that they were working on my meridians. I definitely know they were working on meridians in various areas of my body. But the fact that, you know, that means that altar can only work in on that dimensional sphere and plane that she's created to work on. This particular altar, I know, is she's very good at accessing certain astral levels. There are other altars that I have that only access energy levels that are connected to the earth stars. And this actually ties in very, very well with research and that was done Beth Gooby, and Miranda actually introduced me to Beth Gooby's writing on what she wrote about her alters, and I really recommend to anybody to read up on what Beth Gooby has said about what she found with her own alters, and to my own experiences kind of echo hers to some level in that there are certain alters that seem to live only on certain dimensional levels, and we're meant to be multidimensional beings. So to have a part of your personality, your being that only exists in a particular dimension is odd in itself. And then if that alter, comes forward, steps over and takes over your body and is only working with those energy levels, in particular if it's for a cult ritual, that has further implications in and of itself, basically, in regards to the energy that alter is manifesting. So,
yeah, if I can add to what Sarah said, what she talked about is actually something that I think is pretty revolutionary and has changed my entire concept of alternate personalities. And that is that, what little research and literature we have into dissociative identity disorder, or MPD, multiple personality disorder, says that when an alternate personality is created, it is a fractured portion of the person's psyche, of their brain. So they think that it lives, all of these personalities live in the brain and are even though they can't explain why, a 15-year-old girl would have an 87-year-old man who speaks, fluent Latvian or something like that, or Flemish, where she wouldn't even have the information to create that personality. And the personalities themselves claim that they're distinct individuals. So what we have is that science thinks that personalities are just a fabrication of our minds, of us, fragmenting into different components. But what Beth Gooby writes, and what Sarah and I have been able to confirm, and Duncan as well through our own experience, is that some, not all, but some of the other personalities are, in a sense, like ghosts. They are disembodied souls of other people or beings that live in the astral, and when a person switches, they come down into the person as a personality. So this opens up a whole new understanding of what it means to have programming and to have alternate personalities.
Yeah.
Some of them are your own mind. Some of them are parts of you at younger ages and so forth, like Duncan's little boy and all. And I have many young versions of myself as well. But this changes the field considerably, and it makes it more complex to think that there are other people or beings that comprise the alternate family, if you will. No one's talking about this. I think it's revolutionary. I really do. Especially when we're trying to understand and heal it, and Sarah's done a lot of work on that.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that just blows my mind is there are known rituals where they hook you and they link you up to ancestral beings, ancestral entities, that are meant to work with you in rituals. And then if you take that into regard with things like the demonic realm, that opens up another can of worms altogether, And when you consider that, people say that there's a lot of psychics that have remote viewed various MPs and people in power and say that they've seen these dark forms standing behind them that they say are controlling their mind, and the rituals that these people have to go through to be connected to those entities, there's, this is where it's basically all leading to, and I agree with Miranda. This is kind of revolutionary, really, and it does need to be spoken about and investigated more, definitely.
Yeah.
that kind of takes multidimensional to another level, doesn't it? Because now we're not just dealing with constructed or fragmented personalities. We're dealing with something that's actually been interwoven into the person's total beingness, so to speak. But these entities are, in fact, separate beings, separate souls, separate personalities that are, what, on an astral level?
Yeah.
Yeah. And, when we're talking about, when we're trying to go back and understand what the programmers did to us, we originally thought that they just used torture or technology. They split our personalities and they fabricated new personalities and gave them certain traits or abilities. But now we see how the occult comes in, how the rituals come in, and you have this melding of, top secret black agency with the ritualistic stuff, and it explains a lot about some of the crazy abilities that we can access, where they actually use techniques that bring in these separate individuals and attach them, like Sarah said, to maybe our chakras or various locations on our body in order to bring them in. It's like we have a group of people sitting in an auditorium in the astral, and depending on what colors, tones, symbols, body area you touch to trigger, that being then comes into the body.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's completely right.
It's kind of a simplistic explanation, but it's kind of hard to understand.
Yeah.
Very complex.
Well, one of the things that I did find in my chakras, and I actually have memories of this from one of the facilities that I was placed in, was there was some kind of interdimensional esoteric energy device that was placed in each of my chakras, and they looked like cylinders. And there was an occasion about 2-3 weeks ago, and I emailed Miranda about this because I found it spectacular, and I just had to tell somebody basically what I'd seen and what had happened. But basically, my spirit guide showed me one of my altars, and they're kind of attached like by a string. There's like literally like a lead and an etheric cord that they have. And basically, the home for this particular altar was inside this cylinder, inside my chakra, which is some kind of etheric or interdimensional energy device, and I have memories of these being placed in my chakras. They're black, they're cylinders, they vibrate with a particular frequency when they're switched on, and then basically, again, depending on the area of the body and whatever symbol is and sequence of words is used to trigger the altar, and perhaps I think that other implants are connected to this system as well, then that altar literally comes out from that particular area of the body. It was quite frightening, actually. I mean, you hear about people who are spirit release therapists and exorcists and what have you that find entities that are hiding inside people's meridians and inside people's chakras, and they literally use that information to their advantage, and built these energy, and within me anyway, these energy devices, and I, this is like the home for some of these altars or personalities.
It doesn't seem so insane now when Duncan's talked about the fact that Crowley's jumped into a body and re-entered this incarnation cycle, does it?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have no good things to say about that man at all.
Agreed.
Not a single thing. But I mean, I had a conversation with somebody earlier this year where and this for me is where this whole kind of investigation and kind of like through a series of synchronicitous events kind of like it brought me to this, was where somebody in a conversation earlier this year was talking about soul splicing. This particular person explained to me that they think that they have, a part of somebody else's soul attached to them. And since that conversation, which was in January of this year, and then contact with Duncan and Miranda, and then looking at Beth Gooby's work and what my spirit guides have showed me has just like literally brought all this out onto the table, that this is another part of the occult programming. So there's definitely some level of what this person said to me is soul splicing going on, you know, these personalities and deliberate spirit attachments that are placed, as well as the mind control, the fracturing of the mind. So it's pretty horrific.
And the possibilities are kind of endless also.
Agreed. Very much on that.
Well, I do think that there's a time limit on this. We know that there is, and that we're going through this period, and the speculation varies widely on how long this time period extends, and to some degree, again, you know, as Duncan's stated, and I've believed for a long time too, they've been ordering timelines for a reason, to hold back something which may be this battle, which I think they've fomented, but I also think that on one level they've come to realize that there are people out there that came into this life as warriors, like you described earlier, Sarah, that are basically the counterforce for what they're doing. So, you know, we just hope and pray that there's a limit to this, because does it get worse than soul splicing? Does it get worse than multiple personalities that now contain soul streams from other souls? I mean, that's almost too dark to even consider, but we're talking about it.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like there's got to be a limit. There's got to be a limit as to how far that they can go with this. That's my personal opinion and my personal feeling at this time. But it surely can't be allowed to continue. It can't be. And the more that we kind of research and investigate this and share experiences and understanding and you know and put it out there, what it is, even if it's just something that you think that you found or understood about yourself and your own mind control and what they've done to you, it's all valid and it's all necessary. And even if it, you know, even if you've understood it, and I may have understood it wrong from my own, you know, journey on my own altars and what I've been shown and by my own spirit guides, you know, it could lead on to other things. This may only be a tiny part of it, I don't know. But basically, it's all relevant. It's all valid, and we do need to discuss this and look at it further. You know, they've got some crazy technology out there. You know, but I still feel that there has to be a limit to what they can do. Like, whether that's just my defense mechanism on that, I don't know. But surely they can't go any further than this. It's just crazy.
I think what we need to understand and why it's, as Sarah said, it's so important.
Sorry, hold on a second. Something just blew up in my ear. Jeez, what the hell was that? Oh my God, sorry.
Rock on. I was just going to say, I think I agree with Sarah completely, and one of the reasons why it's so important that we talk about this is they've kept a secret from us for so long, and we're starting to understand that it can work both ways. They've done all this stuff to us and other people, but as we're now learning their methodologies, we can turn it around and claim it for ourselves and not be controlled, but instead control our own beings. And, you know, secrecy has always been their biggest weapon. Now that people know what they're doing, now that we're learning more about what they're doing, we can do it too, only we can do it for the greater good. And, you know, they've used us and abused us and traumatized us for so long now, and they kept it secret because they were so afraid that we would figure out what they're doing and be able to to fight back, basically. So that's why it's so important we talk about this and we exchange notes and ideas and just understand everything that we can about it, because once their secrecy is gone, the playing field gets a little bit more even. You know, they had to use us. They couldn't use themselves for certain things. The people in the projects were specifically chosen for, like Sarah said, their genetic background, their astrological charts, their past lives. If they didn't need us, they wouldn't use it. It would be much easier to keep it secret without dragging, you know, innocent people into it. But they need certain specific people, and so that's why, you know, we have what they want. A lot of us do. That's why they used us. So we just need to learn and turn it around and get this information out there.
Definitely.
Well, and I think that both of you on this call today, Duncan and a lot of the other people that I've interviewed as well, are living proof that, you know, however well they've executed their plan, it wasn't perfect, and that certain things have broken down. I mean, you know, the story of how each one of you have broken through programming, how you've managed to retain your own personal integrity and sovereignty, and how you've managed to recover the parts of you that are compassionate, loving, and have a sense of a spirituality that's benevolent, are kind of speaks to the idea that no, they're not winning. On some scale or another, they are not the masters of reality that they projected themselves to be.
Oh, definitely not. Definitely not. I mean, these people literally do believe, on some level, I really believe that they believe that they're God. You know, they're trying to affect our karma, they're trying to affect our personalities, our timelines, what we manifest and what we do in our lives. And, you know, there's just no way. There's no way, you know, and it's you know, my advice to them is, you ain't God, you're full of bullshit, personally, but, you know. But
agreed.
They literally feel that they're playing God. They're they're trying to recreate something to their specification and design, you know, the whole creator kind of mythology thing, and yeah, it's one ego trip where they're going to end up with a huge fall, and hopefully they'll be like Beelzebub and end up with a bit of blackthorn in their ass.
Well said.
I think that's actually a really good place to leave this interview, unless either one of you has anything else you want to kick in here at the end. But that's kind of a hopeful conclusion to what at times I know has been difficult, dark, and depressing to talk about.
Yeah, that's fine. That's great.
I think you've brought out. I think both of you have brought out a lot of information in this interview that hasn't been heard before, and part of it has to do with the multidimensional level of mind control, and that's an important clue in this. And I hope that other researchers out there will pick this up. I hope other people who have been caught up in the web of any kind of MK Ultra type project will pick up as well, because really what we're doing is throwing pieces out on the table, kind of putting a puzzle together, and that puzzle gives us the ability to sort of, I guess, rally around our better selves, our higher selves, and engage the battle as armored and equipped as we possibly can.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Well, ladies, thank you so much. It was my joy to be able to spend this afternoon with both of you, Sarah in the UK and Miranda, you on the West Coast. And we got a break here at the end. The interference died down, so we managed to get through an interview pretty much intact without too much damage to our neurological systems or our electronic externalized gear as well. So, Sarah, thank you so much for coming on today, and Miranda for putting this together and being a guiding presence through the interview, and I look forward to talking to both of you again.
You're most welcome.
Thank you, Randy.
My blessings
as always.
and my prayers
and
my protection for both of you.
Blessings to you too.
You too.
And I'll close this out right here. This has been an interview with Sarah Stanga from the UK, and Miranda Kelly has been on the line. I'm Randy Maugans from Off Planet Radio, and we'll be back again very soon.